evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Mahoning Drive-In Theater, the largest single-screen drive-in in the United States. We're certainly glad you could be with us this evening, and don't forget the concession stand is open with all kinds of great things to eat and drink.
89.3 Mahoning Drive-In Radio, your old friend Virgil back once again for another exciting episode of the podcast. As you guys know, the only podcast dedicated to the love and revival of our beloved drive-in culture, joined as always by my co-hosts. We got our general manager extraordinaire, Mark, in the house. Say hello, my friend.
Hello.
And we also have the king of the Mahoning, Jeff, owner, projectionist. Say hello, my friend.
Yowzer.
And we're really excited. We got a great one for you guys tonight. A lot of the feedback that we got in that 100th episode celebration was letting us know how much you guys appreciate these owner-operator interviews that we do and how much you guys appreciate and love them and look forward to them. Well, tonight we jump into that. And the nice thing about this owner series, it shined a light on the eclectic bunch of passionate business owners and really dreamers that make up the cinematic landscape that we shine a light on here. But we wanted to widen that spotlight a little bit to include the rich world of indoor 35mm houses that are contributing to the preservation and bringing some killer programming as well, which we love. And the stunning Barrymore Film Center in Fort Lee, New Jersey, is beyond dedicated to presenting classic repertory films, documentaries, indies, cinema gems from all over the world in digital, 35mm and 70mm. So we are beyond blessed to be joined by the executive director, Mr. Nelson Page, who not only matches our passion for cinema, he has had a long career running theaters, both indoor and outdoor. He loves talking about movies and Fort Lee and the history that Fort Lee has as the birthplace of the American motion picture industry. So without further ado, let's welcome the man himself. Welcome to the show, Mr. Nelson Page.
You're very, very kind. And, you know, I had to search around. I'm saying, are they talking about me?
It's always so hard to sum up somebody's, their thing. But for you, when you met Mark, it's like one thing was very clear. You are one of us, such a passionate character, somebody who loves what he does and loves movies and cinema, which is really the heart of this podcast and venture that we're in.
Somebody once asked me, well, why did you want to get into this industry? And I did it very early on. The first assumption was by so many people, oh, well, your family's in this business. I said, oh, no, my father was a mechanic. If he knew what I was doing, because he died in his 50s. And if he looked around and saw what I had done, as a career, he would have said, are you out of your mind? I mean, he could never, because, the key to anybody going into business, whether it be a dry cleaner, a movie theater, a car wash, you can't be risk aversive. You have to know that if I'm going to put in a film and Warner Brothers wants a $20,000 advance, I'm going to do it, because that could make my summer. That could make my Christmas. That could make my year. So you can't say, oh, gee, I can't do that. And it's a little bit easier now because they'll give films away to just about anybody. All right. The days of blind bidding are gone. The days of booking clearance are gone. The days of product splitting are gone pretty much. But it's still an issue that you're still trying to, vie for your market share. The Barrymore Film Center, it's a repertory theater. And one of our board members said to me, he said, well, you're still trying to get your piece of that market. There is no market. There's no repertory market in northern New Jersey. We're building that market because everybody's still used to, looking on Netflix or even maybe even going to New York City. But, we've created a very unique situation here, thanks to, the mayor of Fort Lee, Mark Sokolich, who had this vision. He said, let's have a theater. Don't you think we should have a theater? This is the town that, was the birthplace of the American motion picture industry. And from the early 1900s to 1919, 1920, that was Fort Lee, the motion picture capital of the world. And somebody said, oh, that's right. Before Hollywood. There was no before. There was no Hollywood. Well, the Fort Lee, the film town, was the precursor to Hollywood. In fact, there's a picture that hangs in the hallway up to my office, and it's two guys standing there in front of a plow. And one is Carl Laemmle, and the other is his son. And they're breaking ground for, at that day, that time, was the largest movie studio in the world. And they built it in 1915, and within 24 months, they picked up and moved out to California. Why? People go, because of the sunshine. No, it wasn't because of the sunshine. It was because Thomas Edison got greedy. And the Edison's Patents Trust, if you didn't pay your VIG, you didn't pay that royalty, they busted up your set, took your film, and that was the end of it. So, being 2 hours from Mexico seems to be, a very attractive way to do business, but the Barrymore Film Center, is the right thing at the right time. And, I'm blessed to be in the position that I'm in. And thank you guys for recognizing the value of what we're trying to do there.
Well, I mean, you said it. It's all about building that community. And the Mahoning's a perfect example of that, where if you go out on a limb and really put your heart into something, they will come. And there's a big crossover with fans of what we do and fans of what you do. But it's a great segue there. When did the Barrymore come to be? Is this a recent venture? Is this grand historic?
People go, did you build this building or was it here? I said, no. This was purpose built. And again, this was to bring a cultural icon to the community, actually to the region. The Fort Lee Film Commission was established by a gentleman named Tom Myers, probably in the late 1990s. And the Film Commission was established to bring film production back to Fort Lee, whether it be commercials or they were doing a lot of Law and Order SVUs and things like that. And, Tom and the team were working very diligently to bring people to Fort Lee. And at that time, I had several theaters in the area. I mean, at my zenith, I had 12 locations in 4 different states. And around Fort Lee, I had one in Teaneck, a 4-screen theater, and a 3-screen theater in Guttenberg, New Jersey, which is the second smallest town in the whole state. But we had this great little theater that was doing $1.5 million a year. I had put a theater organ in there. We were doing a lot of silent films. And Tom called me up and he said, you seem to be as wacky as we are. We want you to bring you on board. And within a year, I became the chairman of the Film Commission. And over that 20-year period, film became a very popular subject matter for, people rediscovering the history of that community. And, with the new administration developing a vacant 16-acre site in town, they made a wonderful agreement with the developer. And the developer gave us the property, also gave us a couple $1 million towards the project. And the town turned around and they put out a bid for almost $14 million to build the rest of the building. And now the mayor looked at us and said, okay, now it's time for you guys to program this, to make it a shine, and to make it something that everybody wants to come to and be a part of. And unfortunately, Tom had a serious health issue, which prevented him from going forward. And they hired me as the design consultant to hire the architect and build the building and start with the programming. And then they asked me to be executive director. And my first inclination, and actually the first 3 times they asked me, I said no. I retired at 59. I sold off whatever I had because I saw where the industry was going. Hard to make a buck. You
pull me back in.
You had a $3 million a year payroll, and when you can't make that payroll, a lot of part-timers, some full-timers, but it's a lot of money. And, in the old days, if you count on your summers, your June, your May, your June, July, and somewhat, of August, and at least November through December. And that whole model changed.
Yeah,
and once that model changed,
anymore?
And I'm sitting there saying, Jesus, I'm working for a whole year, and the manager of my Matamora Centerplex is making more money than me. How do you rationalize that? And that's the time when you see if there's an opportunity to sell, an opportunity not to renew a lease, whatever the case may be. And I started to, what my accountant would refer to as a soft landing. It took about a year, but we did what we had to do. And I was very happy to work within the framework of what we were doing in Fort Lee. But, things change. And, because I actually live 60 miles from the BFC. And because the most common question always asked about the Barrymores, why named after the Barrymore family? Well, because they lived in Fort Lee. John, Ethel, and Lionel Barrymore lived with their father, Maurice, in Fort Lee. And we thought this was a way to give them the due tribute that they should have had and did have, certainly by making their first films there in Fort Lee before going to the Broadway stage and then to Hollywood. And actually, on the corner opposite the theater was John Barrymore's first acting gig in a program in a play called Man of the World that was actually directed by his father. So there's history all around us. Where did D.W. Griffith make his first films? Where did Max Sennett make his first films? Where was Mabel Normand in that particular shot? Where did Alice Guy Blaché, the first woman director in cinema history, have her studio?
It's just overflowing with culture. It makes sense to have such a place in that location. And again, talk about right place, right time, even though you were out of the game, for this thing to come to fruition and have the opportunity to do something like this, I say it's a gift that you're there. It really does take that heart behind it. And it was certainly the right decision. Now, going back a little bit, I mean, we're talking about the Barrymore, but we want to focus on you as well. How did you get into this game? I mean, it seems like you've been all over the map for years. How did you come to get into the movie exhibition industry?
It was interesting because I never went to college. I wound up, when I graduated high school, I didn't have the college mentality. And I actually went to the superintendent of schools, who I knew fairly well, a gentleman named Dave Dervitz. You never truly die, when people still mention your name. So it gives me great pleasure to mention his name. And I said, look, Coach, here's the deal. I don't want to go to college. You got anything for me to do? And he goes, well, we don't have a budget. He says, but, we got a $50,000 grant to put together a TV studio. Do you know anything about that? I said, well, yeah, which I didn't. And I actually went to the Sony showroom in Manhattan, and I picked up a 3-day course for $150, and I figured out what I had to figure out. And they hired me for $3,400 for the year, believe it or not. And I ran their little TV studio, and I took over their AV program. And so at 17, I graduated as a student, and 3 months later, they hired me as the district media specialist, whatever that was in those days. And I did that probably, 17, 18, 19, probably 20, so I was there 4 or 5 years. I met my wife there, who was a student teacher, and I probably thought I was going to be there for the rest of my life. But, once you're married, and I got married young, I was 21. I thought, well, here's an opportunity to, maybe make a little extra money. And on a warm summer's night, I said, I'm going to go get some ice cream. And I went up to the local A&P, and there's the Fairview Cinemas. And on the marquee, it says, help wanted. And I thought, how cool would that be, working in the movie theater, So, I was always a big fan of film. And, I always, love the lore of the movie theater. I love the feel. I love the smell. I love the sensation. Movie theaters, that better than anybody. They have that great smell,
Oh, yeah.
And it only attracts a certain kind of a person. Just like the popcorn at a drive-in has a certain smell, unlike any other smell anywhere else, It's funny, drive-in popcorn is always just a little bit better. I don't know why, but it is. But I went there. I took a job as an usher at $1.75 an hour. Within probably 3 weeks, 4 weeks, I was the assistant manager. And then within another month, I decided this is what I wanted to do for the rest of my life. Very simple.
Amazing.
And within 24 months, we acquired our first theater, because the gentleman who was the manager, a gentleman named Dennis Lynch, and a couple of my high school buddies, Kevin Friel and Mitchell DeVoskin, we pooled our resources. We put together about $150,000, and we acquired our first theater in Teaneck, New Jersey. And you're supposed to struggle. You're supposed to really, if you're supposed to be killing it for every nickel you made. Well, I wound up with a county exclusive of Moonraker.
Oh wow!
And we took in 6 figures in the first month.
Amazing.
And of course, like any enterprising mid-20-year-old, we ran out and bought 2 more theaters.
And were those single screen theaters at the time, or were those?
They were all single. The Teaneck facility was 1,000 seats. 1,000 seats. And oh yeah, 1,000 seats. 28,000 square feet. So, there were some rough times, and then I hit upon the formula. The formula was, because you get a big film in the summertime, you think that's going to go on. And I learned that once September came, nothing. So by the time we got to January and February, we went to a $1.50 policy, all seats, all times. And then that's what made us our first million. The $1.50 policy, at that point, we had a half dozen theaters. We ran that policy in all the theaters, and we changed every week, and we made a lot of money. But in that period of time, what happened? Everybody went from 1 screen to 4 screens to 6 screens to 8
boom
screens.
of the multiplex. Yeah.
That's right. And I'm sitting there with 1,000-seat theater, and I made the big mistake. I was in love. I was in love with my 1,000-seat theater. I was in love with my 1,200-seat theater. I was in love with my 1,400-seat theater. I was in love with my 900-seat. And, that's what killed me. And I learned a very valuable lesson. You can't fall in love to the point of being blind to, your business needs, are and should be. And so on my 30th birthday, I filed for a multi-million-dollar bankruptcy. How about that? On my 30th birthday. And I remember the bankruptcy judge looked at me and goes, well, you got 2 choices here. You can either run away, he says, because business isn't for everybody. He says, or you take this as a very well-paid education, and you go back into it, you lick your wounds, and you make it happen, but this time with a very expensive education. And I did. And we went on from that point forward. And it was the best thing that could have ever happened to me. It really was, because I learned a lot. I lot. I was embarrassed.
Sometimes things happen for a reason,
Oh yeah. And you know what? If a location didn't work, I cut it loose, and I didn't let it strangle me. And we wound up, building a very, very nice business. We had theaters in Pennsylvania. I had them in Lancaster, Easton, Quakertown. It was a great place to run movie theaters. I had the 7 screens in Matamoros, Pennsylvania, which was great. I had sprinkling of theaters in New York State, one in Massachusetts at Fall River, and then in the middle of all this, we wound up with a drive-in in Paramus, New Jersey, and it was one of the most successful theaters that I ever had. The problem was the clientele was rough, and
the area, you mean? Yeah.
Yeah, not necessarily Paramus, but we were getting a rougher clientele from the surrounding areas. Right. And the first thing that happened is in a very large tropical storm that came through, I lost the top left-hand corner of the screen. They found that 2 pounds over. You know how that is. So we had to bring in a construction company. All of a sudden, my profit for the year went out the window because I had to replace half the screen. And then, we were replacing toilets and we were replacing sinks because people were using them as diving boards, and there was some gunplay. And of course, we had a theater in Livingston, New Jersey, which was about, 25 miles south of Paramus. And we were the first theater in the area to use, FM transmitted sound for your car. You turn on your radio, everything's cool. I'm driving up, and all of a sudden I'm hearing The Empire Strikes Back on my radio, and I'm 20 miles away. So somebody turned up the gain on the transmitter.
Wow. Took over the area.
The FCC is not amused. So
it's that storied history, that really explains a lot, and it gives the motivation that, if you stick with your guns, if you learn from those mistakes, it can benefit you. Talking about the inspiration, as kids, we all fell in love with the drive-in. We fell in love with movies. It's why we're here. What was your experience like as a youngster, whether with indoor cinema or drive-ins?
Honestly, what's interesting is that, and I can't tell the story anywhere except here. And I'll tell you why. Because, I'm the big theater guru. I'm a guy who, knows how to restore, do acoustical, and this and that, blah, blah, blah. But all my early films, we saw to drive-in.
Yep.
Ben-Hur, drive-in. Lawrence of Arabia, drive-in. How the West Was Won, drive-in. We weren't in any hard tops. My parents took us there. We didn't go to a hard top theater until we could do it on our own as kids. 8th grade, freshman in high school. Then once we were going out and doing this on our own, there was a theater in the town next door to us, the Palace Theater in Bergenfield, New Jersey. And we used to walk there. And I remembered, sitting there and watching the Sand Pebbles. I was 13 years old when I came home because I watched it 3 times. My mother goes to me, the Sand Pebbles? With Steve McQueen? I said, yeah. And you sat through that 3 times? I said, it was great.
Jeff told the story of seeing Sand Pebbles at the drive-in, right, Jeff?
Exactly, yeah. The Super Skyway drive-in just outside of Allentown.
Oh, yeah. Wow.
Allentown, Pennsylvania, not Allentown, New Jersey. Allentown, Pennsylvania.
Oh, yeah. No. Look, my first foray into Pennsylvania exhibition and theatrical presentation was the State Theater in Easton, Pennsylvania.
Hell yeah!
Which was a beautiful theater. The town and the county and the state had put a lot of money into it, several millions of dollars, and they had a very progressive board of directors. And we went to Catasauqua to buy some old projector parts, and somebody said, "Oh, you should see this theater." We walked in there just as they were closing their doors. And I said, what happened? Well, they didn't get the audiences that they wanted to attract. Easton, which I always thought was a beautiful town, and now it's a booming town, was having, some growing pains. They couldn't get anybody downtown. They couldn't develop an audience. And because they had so much competition with, whether it be Lafayette or Lehigh or any of those colleges with these huge field houses and theaters, and they were showing Phantom of the Opera touring shows and Johnny Mathis and blah, blah, blah. And of course, I'm sitting there with 1,500 seats. I'm trying to develop an audience, and I can't charge more than $30 because everybody's undercutting me. And I'm thinking, let's bring in movies. And we brought in film, and we were using the old carbon arc projectors, and I was running the projectors, and I love carbon arc, by the way, just so you know. And but I couldn't really get that audience. I had a 5-year deal with a 1-year kick out. We put a lot of money into the place, and it just couldn't. But my time there was so beautiful because it was such a lovely theater. It really, really was. We had Ray Charles who came in, Mary Chapin Carpenter. We had the Smothers Brothers. We had big. I couldn't charge enough to make it profitable. And, after the first year, I said, this isn't going to work for me. But you sat with the town. He said, look, you're going to always have to know that we paid the back bills. You guys can operate. And I'm very proud of the fact that facility is still there by the 1 year that I spent there, just keeping the place alive, And for anybody who ever goes there, it is one of the most beautiful theaters that, I ever operated. It really, really is.
And really you did your part. You did your part to keep it alive, That's the beautiful thing.
And I lost $140,000 that year.
Well, again, a lesson learned, right? We'll chalk it up.
I'd love to tell you about the ones I made money in, but there are those that you didn't make any money in either. The live ones with film never, were always touch and go because, people, it's a very odd combination. At the Barrymore, we do a very nice combination of film and live. It really works out well for us. But some of these older, larger facilities, it was always tough. It really, really was.
Yeah, it's that balance. Well, I'm curious about your run with the Paramus. So how did that end for you? Or obviously the Paramus Drive-In's not there anymore.
Well, what happened was I was a tenant of Macy's Incorporated because they owned the property at the time. And, we were on a year-to-year lease. And I went back to them after probably 2 years and said, either you're going to help me, you're going to let me go to a percentage rent, or you can have it back. I said, because I'm getting killed here. I said, we're making money on the books. I said, but, every time I turn around, the one day I walk, you had the little kiosk, where people would come in, you're selling tickets, you're bringing, carload after carload, and somebody in the middle of the night took their car, backed into the little kiosk, knocked it over. All the electric, it just got very rough. It got very rough. You come in the next day, all the windows, the candy, area, candy stand, we were all busted out, stuff like that.
You never knew what to expect when you're coming in.
You never knew what to expect. And again, We had a really nice clientele, but there's also a rough element that was coming in, and it just wasn't going to be a long-term thing for me, because all of a sudden, in that particular time, I had 8 or 9 locations, and this one was the one that was gobbling up all my time and causing me all the grief. And it just whatever we took out in profit went back in for repairs, and that was they actually took it back. They leveled it, and they made additional parking out of it.
Wow. So pretty much your run there was the last run there.
Correct.
Wow.
Correct.
When was that?
That was 1979, 1980, 1981.
So yeah, that would have been one of the early big waves of drive-in.
And the one thing that I have left from it is I have the scope lens from the number 2 projector that sits on my desk, which is about 2 feet long.
Oh yeah.
And was that a single screener? And how big was the screen, if you recall?
Oh, the screen was 40 by 80. It was huge. It was single screen.
Not bad.
No. It was right off of Route 4. You pulled right in. You had some trees that gave you some light protection. And in the beginning, Friday nights we would do some pyrotechnics. We put a little playground out in front of the screen. People would come, very family oriented, really enjoyed, seeing people bring their children, because my experience in drive-ins was great. I went to the 303 Drive-In, Orangetown, New York, and the Nyack Drive-In, really great places. And the Nyack Drive-In actually was a brand new facility. And all of a sudden, one day, gone. It just gone. That was at a time, actually, when I was in high school. I was in high school, 69, 70, 71, gone. First of all, the drive-ins went, and then Palisades Amusement Park closed down. And that was the end of it.
Yeah. Let's shift it back to the Barrymore. So what's the layout like at the Barrymore? Well, you said you do live shows as well, so I take it staged area in front of the screen?
What we did was we wanted to make sure that we had enough, how should I say, flexibility. I have a 45-foot wide stage, 25-foot deep. We have a 20 by 40-foot screen, which rolls up, rolls down. We're pumping about 4,000 watts of sound through the building, all Dolby Digital. We are equipped for 35, 70, and 4K digital. So we can pretty much do everything but Super 8.
How often do you get the opportunity for the 70 mil, or is it because you have the 70 that whenever these pop up, you have the opportunity?
Well, this particular Sunday we're running Dark Crystal, because it's a mag stereo print. So this will be the first time we're running a mag print, and we actually tested it today, and it really sounded good. Last week we finished up the New Jersey 70 millimeter run of the Napoleon, which we did very, very well with. But a couple of months before that, we actually ran 2001: A Space Odyssey and sold out.
Come on. What a dream come true. What a dream.
It is because the depth, the color, the sound, it's really fairly spectacular. People go, really? Is 70 such a big deal? Yeah, it is. It is. And it is a dream. And we do a lot of 35. And of course today, going back to the Lafayette Theater, which was our flagship theater, which was up in Rockland County, New York, we did a big screen classic series on Saturday mornings where we would get 400 or 500 people. And in those days, when they had a new DVD release, they would strike a new print, and for promotional reasons. And so we were getting, name of film, Portrait of Jenny, a beautiful new print. We were Phantom of the Opera. We did a Phantom series where we did the Herbert Lom 62 version. We did the 43 Nelson Eddy version. We did the 1925 silent version, and every one of these prints were pristine, gorgeous. That 1962 Hammer color, God, it was great. It's hard now to get those pristine prints, and a lot of collectors like myself wound up selling a lot of it and parting out their collections. I had 67 prints. Probably half a dozen of them were in IB Tech. All right, they had a beautiful Beckett in IB Tech, Man for All Seasons IB Tech, Zulu in IB Tech. The color, yes. And I sold everything. Because my thought was, where A, am I going to store all this stuff? And B, 35 is, done, toast, gone. But who knew? Who knew?
Yeah, that's the thing we talked about when we chatted on the phone is, the collection, the things that come around. That was the case with a lot of those vinyl collectors too. They just didn't know.
Yeah.
There's no way to know. But yeah, what a time! What a time to be alive,
Oh, well, it is. I mean, and I got to tell you, the projectors that we have, we purchased the 3570s. We paid $20,000 for both of them. I could probably get $35 for each one now, because all of a sudden there's been such a boomerang effect, for 35 and for 70, and all of a sudden, because of Christopher Nolan and Tarantino and others who are just, making, these 70 films. I mean, obviously, once the Academy Award nominations are out, I'm going to grab a print of Oppenheimer and run that for a week. But that gives me that flexibility. And remember, I have an 8-plex 1 block away from me, so I have to be on my toes, And I don't look at them as competition because they don't do what I do, and I can't do what they do.
You offer something totally unique with that format.
Yeah,
we feel that.
Yeah.
And I mean, until recently, that was the case for us. We had a 6-screen multiplex right up the street from us, and we never saw that as competition because they were showing new films on digital and we were showing old films on film.
Yeah.
Different points.
And then how about you guys? I mean, I know when it comes to 35 print, I know you deal with collectors as well as I do deal with collectors from time to time. But, are you finding, it hard to get a clean 35? I mean, for me, last March, I got a print and I said, okay, is it A print, B print, C print? What's the quality? Oh, it's like a B- print. It was a print of The Quiet Man. Yeah. Holy cow. It was in ghastly shape. It was a D quality print. I was embarrassed to run the thing. But, I mean, once you advertise and promote.
We get that all the time, where it's sometimes we don't know what we're getting until it gets to us, just because the grading process is kind of still backwards a bit. And there's no real kind of gauge until you get it into your hands on how well it's going to look or play. So I think we always go for the greatest print possible that we can get. But if something's faded, if something's got minor issues with it, it's almost an added appeal with the grindhouse mentality of the drive-in and what the Mahoning does. We almost want to see all the, imperfections. It's a thrill, but obviously there's a line there. You want it to be a good presentation as well. But yeah, it's always a balance when it comes to that,
I have a spooky clientele because they're people like us. Who understand that. And we want to see the film in its original form, so we understand that they're going to be, how should I say, they're going to have to be some concessions made, knowing that, you're seeing something that's rare. And then you have people who are strolling in who are just not savvy to any of this and aren't, are totally not understanding as to why there's 3 emulsion scratches running down the middle of the whole
hard part. Yep. That's the hard part, is as Jeff says, people are now conditioned to digital. And everything being as pristine as can be, your television at home is better than anything you could have seen at the theaters when we were kids. It's just gotten to a point where, that appreciation for the format, the film, the programming, there's a lot that goes and comes with that. I think your guys' model and a lot of nonprofits' model of having this membership program and building a community with it is essential, because that's really what they're buying into, is the idea that this is something rare.
Any of our live programming or musical programming presentations always have to be centered around film. It's we're not going to have a kazoo festival, but I mean, now we're
the kazoo movie comes out.
But I mean, at the end of the month, we have on the 27th, on Mozart's 268th birthday, we're running Amadeus, and we have F. Murray Abraham coming in conversation. He'll speak for an hour, and then we'll run the film. Whenever I can do that, I mean, in February we're doing. We have the producer of Goodfellas, Barbara DeFina, coming, and she'll talk for an hour, and then we'll run Goodfellas, and it adds a little extra something special. But when we do a musical presentation in the early February, we do a great cabaret show with several Broadway performers, and it's going to be all the great MGM musical songs. And so, we sell our top ticket price is $115, because the show is costing me $10,000. So you have to be there, and we always sell out that show, which is nice. We have right now booked for the end of March. I have the Festival Orchestra coming in, and they're going to be doing an evening of music of John Williams. So I can put a 50-piece orchestra on the stage and get an audience for that. So that's the kind of thing that gives me that kind of flexibility that a lot of other theaters just don't have.
You're elevating the culture, the area's culture, everything. I mean, that's what is so inspiring about what you do. And a lot of these indoor houses do is, they find a way to truly make an event, to really make a point to sell you on that ticket. There's going to be a reason you're going to come out of your house, and you guys just are so good at adding that cherry on top of an already gorgeous venue, and the format sell. It's beautiful.
But in that case, you get somebody who puts something up on Facebook and says, "Well, I don't know why I'd want to go there. I can stay at home and watch it." And I said, "Well, you know what? You can also crack 2 eggs, and you can also make an omelet in the morning. You don't have to go out for breakfast, but you do." All right? Why? Because it's just something better about the experience. You go to your local diner. You have breakfast. You sit with other people. You enjoy a meal. You listen to conversation. And that's the whole idea. The whole idea of a shared experience, certainly in the movie theater. Last Valentine's Day, we ran Moonstruck. Sold 240 tickets. People were screaming with laughter in the theater, and it almost brought tears to my eyes, It was just exactly what you want, the people to react that way. And then when we were done, as all the women left, we all gave them a rose, and they were all very happy to have it. A little memorable experience. And because there was snowpack out in front of the theater, somebody actually took the rose, put it in the snow, and then took a shot of the rose, the snow, and the theater behind it. It was just a really kind of a nice moment,
You're doing the right thing, when the audience connects like that. And I'm sure they appreciate it as much as it sounds like they do.
And of course, there are those times that, you think that you've rediscovered, perpetual motion, and, 8 people show up. It happens.
We know that all too well.
Yeah. And then you toss the weather on it with us. You never know what you're going to get. You plan for the greatest event in the world, and then it pours.
And then every once in a while, we did a thing called World Cinema Showcase. And for 10 Sundays, we were showing films from around the world. And one of the prints that we showed was John Cocteau's Beauty and the Beast. And this thing was in black and white on steroids. It was one of the most beautiful prints I've ever seen on a screen, and it was just lovely. Janus Films had a beautiful 35 print of it, which I think was ran twice. And we were very fortunate to get this. And then the last one we ran from them, okay, and by the way, we did very, very well with that. We had 100 people plus in there for that. Then at the end of the series, I took a little walk on the wild side, and I booked in Ivan the Terrible Part 1.
Yes.
Wherever. Another beautiful print, for the 12 people that saw it. But hey, I had to take a shot. I really did.
That's bragging rights right there.
Well, I was there. I'm a proud card-carrying member of the Barrymore Film Center, and I went down for the double feature of The Pink Panther and A Shot in the Dark, and it was, let's say, underattended, but I'd never had an opportunity in my life to see those on the big screen, growing up loving them on TV and home video, and that was just like the most fun I'd had in a long time, and I was the guy laughing out loud through the whole thing, and it's one of those things. I know it as a customer, and I know it as somebody who works at a theater. Sometimes, even if the attendance isn't grand, you're giving somebody something really special that might be the only time they ever get a chance in their life to have that experience with that film on the big screen.
Sure, and if you walk out of there satisfied, then I've done my job.
It was great.
If you could talk to me months after the event and say that you were pleased, then that makes me happy. And, now the big question is, which did you enjoy more? Did you enjoy The Pink Panther or A Shot in the Dark?
I've always liked A Shot in the Dark a little bit more.
Me too.
And what I'll say was too, everything's better on the big screen. No matter how many times if you think you know a film to the point where you can't watch it again, watch it on the big screen, and it's like seeing it for the first time. Peter Sellers is always doing something when he is on screen in the Pink Panther. He's not doing anything distracting, but he's always doing something that shows you he is an idiot. And it was wonderful. I never noticed half of what he did in that film. These little tiny gestures and things, but focus it's like somebody said about the Three Stooges. The next time you watch a Stooges short, just watch Larry. He's always doing something. Even if Curly is the center of attention, watch Larry. He's not wasting his screen time. And Peter Sellers is like that in the first two Pink Panther movies. So thank you for that opportunity. And also, I wanted to mention that you have an organ down under the screen, and I was there for a screening of 1941, and you had an organist playing music from Spielberg films, and I thought that was just wonderful.
What, just before the movie started?
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, that was my trademark when I was in business. We had half a dozen theaters with theater pipe organs in them. Half of them, which I installed. My accountant used to look at the books and say, how much money does this cost? You're out of your mind. We had 4 staff organists. Can you believe this?
Oh.
And yet we did a lot of silent films, and we did very, very well. People always loved the pre-shows. We do it every Saturday night before the show, and I was actually president of the American Theater Organ Society for 4 years. And it's just an added plus, a little live entertainment when people come in, and it's very exciting. It really does add a little something. It's the heart of the theater, actually. And we have a full orchestra pit, and I can tell you, we've put other instruments in there. We've done other things. In fact, we did Phantom of the Opera with a 20-piece orchestra, and it was exciting. But the organ still really just if you have the right individual.
Yeah.
And we have a gentleman named Ian Fraser, who was a young guy. He's 21 years old, and he's really a master of his craft. And he's actually the 23 recipient of the American Theater Organ Society's Young Organist First Place Award, and we're very fortunate to have him. And it costs money, but it's worth it. It gives him an opportunity to be a cinema organist. I mean, how many are there? All right. It gives us an opportunity to showcase a part of film history that really was only around for about a decade. And it also gives us an opportunity to be able to do not only entertain an audience before and after the show, but it also allows us to do live theatrical accompaniment to silent films. So it's a win-win for us.
That's one of the things I love about the Barrymore since the first time I went, is that there's this, it exudes, unlike myself, it exudes class and respect for film history and education without like clobbering you over the head. From the player piano that's on the second floor to the sort of gallery of film history to the stars on the sidewalk, from the various, really recognizable names that started in Fort Lee to tell us about the museum that's there, which I found amazing the first time I went there.
Well, I'm going to get to the museum in a second, but there's a book called David O. Selznick's Hollywood. And yet the book starts out where he and his brother, Myron, used to take the ferry, the 125th Street ferry, from Manhattan to bring their father, Louis Selznick, who had a studio right down the block, World Pictures, and he used to bring him his lunch every day. And he talks about coming up from the ferry and walking down Main Street, basically walking right past where the theater is now. And it just knows that history is a part of looking right out my front door. And it was Selznick who said there are only 2 kinds of class, first class and no class. And I like to think that we are a first class operation.
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
That being said, the museum was an integral part of what we wanted to do as part of our educational outreach. We are a 501c3, not-for-profit, and we want to make sure that, we give something back to the community. And what we do is every 6 months we change the exhibit. The first one was the Barrymore exhibit, because people talk about the Barrymores. They're a little sketchy as to who these people really are in connection with Drew Barrymore. Because when they hear Barrymore, they think right away of Drew Barrymore. And we've been lucky enough, even though Drew has never visited us, she did do a wonderful segment on her show about the theater, which was really nice. And awesome. People found out a lot about, the fact that the Barrymores were this dynastic family, and, they had their origins in Fort Lee, which is great. And that lasted for 6.5 months. And we closed down, and then we just put up a new exhibit about 4.5 months ago, and it's called The Original Power Couple, Douglas Fairbanks and Mary Pickford, which made all their first films in Fort Lee as well. And we also have, it's about 2,000 square foot of museum space, and we open that free to the public. So if you come to see the movie, we open up the museum whenever we're open for film. People can come in, they can tour them. You know, we actually set it up to be a 15 or 20-minute walkthrough. Sometimes people will be in there for an hour. God bless, which is nice. So we have another month to run on that, and then we're opening up with a classic poster collection. We'll have window cards, lobby cards, you know, half sheets, British quads, you know, 1 sheets, 3 sheets, 6 sheets.
Steel,
you know, we'll have
art.
60, we'll have 60 posters. And that's going to run for 12 months because we're going to actually change out some of the posters as time goes on. So the collection is always fresh. But it's our way of giving back. That's why when you walk in the front door, the museum is right there. This way, I'm not making anybody pay for anything. They come in, they see the exhibit, and if they want to stay, they can stay. They buy admission tickets to see the film. And then, you know, and in the meantime, as you pointed out, we do have the piano playing upstairs. And you know, the player, people are always fascinated by, because we bought 3 pianos. I have an upright in the orchestra pit, you know, for orchestral presentations. We have an 1899 fully restored Steinway grand on the stage, and then I got the Kanabi player upstairs, which entertains a lot of people. So it's you know, the music is very important in everything that we do there, because, you know, film, you know, we were actually I was talking to a friend of mine today about Bernard Herrmann. And we were talking about Psycho, and we were talking about Vertigo, and we were talking about his problems with Hitchcock for Topaz. And then it came out that in our discussion that his favorite score was actually The Ghost of Mrs. Muir. Because, you know, at that time, he was a staff composer for 20th Century Fox. And, you know, in reading some of his, you know, biographical background, that was his favorite score, which I think is great. But the whole conversation actually came from the fact that if you watch on MeTV, the old Perry Masons, you know, from the late 50s, 57, 58, and 59, he wrote a lot of the background music for the Perry Mason show. Can you imagine that? Bernard Herrmann. But, you know, I mean, a buck is a buck is a buck. Yeah. So
it's funny how often I've walked into the theater and I hear the piano playing upstairs, and I know there's nobody up there, but every time I think, wow, that piano player is really good. And I walk up there and it's like, it's Mrs. You know, the Ghost is playing for Mrs. Muir. There's nobody up there. It sounds very natural.
Well, the key is that it's actually trying to draw you upstairs. So you'll see those dedication panels to all the people who are on our Walk of Fame. Because when somebody, you know, is walking the Walk of Fame and they're looking down at these names, and they may not be instantaneously recognizable to everybody. Who is Frances Marion? You know, I mean, so you'll find out who she was and the films that she wrote, and, you know, why she's so important in cinema history, and, you know, why, you know, we honor her in Fort Lee. She lived there, she worked there, and she eventually, you know, wound up being one of the most prolific screenwriters, you know, in cinema history. But, you know, it's a learning experience, and it's a good one. And of course, you know, Sam Goldwyn. We all know Sam Goldwyn. My favorite Sam Goldwyn quote is "Include me out." He's such a character. But he's the one who took over the Universal Studios when Laemmle, you know, packed up and moved out to California. And somebody said, well, if he built the world's largest studio, why would he have done it? I said, because they offered 10,000 acres of free land, now known as Universal City. But at the time, you know, they said, take it, tax-free, it's yours. You know, incorporate your own, you know, municipality. And you can't turn down an offer like that. And they slowly but surely all emigrated out to, you know, California. And it was a big blow for you know, certainly Fort Lee. But at that point in time, you had people like Oscar Micheaux, all right, first great African-American film director, who made many of his films in a lot of these studios that were now on a per diem rental basis, and made it affordable for him to be able to create some of the great films that he made. So one man's ceiling is another man's floor.
And speaking of Fort Lee history, am I correct in remembering from those panels that there were once Westerns made in Fort Lee?
Oh my God, like crazy, you know.
To me, the idea of a New Jersey Western is just funny, but I guess if it reads on camera, it reads on camera.
Well, one of the first great films that was made there was the American Eclair Robin Hood. And why? Because you had forests, you had ponds, you had stone walls. It was the place that people from New York City would go to for location shooting. That's what brought Fort Lee to the forefront. And then because there was so much opportunity to be able to shoot so many different scenes, before Birth of a Nation, D.W. Griffith shot his film The Battle there, and that was up in Coatesville. So there you have these huge Civil War battles going on. You had Rambo's Saloon, which, by the way, is preserved by the Fort Lee Film Commission. A dozen westerns a month were being made up there because the horses were plentiful, and it was an opportunity to be able to take advantage of all the dirt roads that meander through the town. It's pretty interesting to see the volume of 1 and 2 reelers that were made there. It's estimated over 4,000 films were made in Fort Lee, and it's a proud fact. And of course, once all that commerce left, the town suffered greatly because that income was very important. And once it was gone, it was terribly missed.
Yeah, I love your passion for film history and your knowledge of the local history. Clearly you are the perfect person to be in the position because you can convey so much about the love of the area and the importance of the area.
A lot of it I learned from listening to Tom Myers. A lot of it I learned from listening to Dr. Richie Kozarski, who was wrote several great books on Fort Lee. One would be Hollywood on the Hudson. You listen carefully to the people who know more than you. And over the years, all of a sudden you speak as if you were the one who discovered these facts, when in actuality, you just listened and learned,
Yeah.
And hopefully somebody will listen to this and say, I really want to go to this town now. The center of this all is all the original studios, all the studio buildings are gone. But the Fort Lee Film Commission in its day did turn around and build several markers, which show you where the Solex studios were, or where the original Universal studios were, or where the original Fox studios were, where Theda Bara first made her great films. Right? And these are very important people in the annals of filmmaking. And there's a spot right on Main Street where Fatty Arbuckle made Reckless Romeo, and you go there all these years later, and the stone wall is still there.
Wow,
some of the buildings are still there, and it's quite impressive. So, anybody who wants to and Mary Pickford, where she made New York Hat with Lionel Barrymore, some of those buildings are still there, and it's a real stroll down memory lane.
Well, that's the beauty of the trip to the Barrymore, is it's not just a trip to go and see a classic film on a classic format or a unique program or whatever. It is truly an opportunity to get schooled and get knowledge and visit those locations. And for a film fan, a movie lover like all of us and everybody listening, what a treat. What a treat.
Well, somebody once came to me and said, well, they shot movies in North Carolina. I said, they were shooting films like crazy up and down the eastern seaboard. It's not that was what made Fort Lee unique. What made Fort Lee unique is because there was such a volume of traffic coming over from the city to shoot location, shots, all right, and to do that Western, or to do that epic, or to do that, downtown New York Hat type of film. There was so much of that in demand that, all of a sudden, a costume shop opened up. And then there was a prop shop. And then there was, where they were renting horses and buggies. And then next thing you know, a laboratory shot up. And then next thing you know, a studio shot up. And it became the first studio town. Yeah. When people talk about Hollywood is an area, Los Angeles, an area, twice the size of Bergen County, for crying out loud. I always enjoyed when they, at the end of MGM Film, would always say, Made in Hollywood, USA. No, it was Culver City. It had nothing to do with Hollywood. I always thought that was kind of weird. Culver City's not even a part of Los Angeles County. And I'm thinking, I don't know why Culver City ever put up with that, but in Fort Lee, everybody was shooting back to back. And it was a community because those that were making films there also lived there. And if they didn't live there, they certainly knew the people that were. And it became quite a community of filmmakers and of artists,
Yeah.
And you get a lot of people who were on the Broadway stage who would come and they would act there and they would come and go. And it was just a very unique experience. So, and again, because it was a small town and, it was all very condensed where the studios were, there were 17 active studios. I mean, fairly impressive. These big glass top buildings, and everybody's feverishly making films. We have that mural on the second floor behind the piano, and it's a beautiful picture of Marion Davies standing there learning her lines. And there's the orchestra that would play to get the actors in the mood. And there's Alan Dwan, and there's this one and that one. It's just such a rich history. And for anybody who wants to come, we'll take you around. We'll show you what we got. I think you'll be impressed.
Absolutely. I'm going to turn it over to Jeff if he has any questions. But before I do, I'm sure everybody is curious about your projection booth. Being the only full-time 35mm drive-in, our obsession with the format runs very, very deep. We switched to reel in 2015, so we had the ability to work with the major studios and private collectors. I take it you're also reel-to-reel, right?
Oh, absolutely. We have a lovely projectionist. Her name is Dorman Birmingham. Dorman has what we like to say, she has great hands. She treats films like they're celluloid gold. She really has an affinity, for handling, films delicately. She loves film. She nurtures film. And we run reel to reel. There are no plotters in the building. That being said, we also run our 70 reel to reel, which is not easy.
Yes, which I'm so curious, the undertaking.
So what we have to do is we actually have to bring the second operator in to work with her, not just for the lifting of the reels, but, it takes twice as long to thread up. And the cylinder reels are very, very, very heavy. And they can actually make that little clip at the end of the spindle jiggle loose. And you know what happens when that clip jiggles loose? You wind up with a print on it.
Yeah.
So, Jeff, you know all about that, okay? So you got to keep your eyes on it. And it takes two people, and some of these films are just not the greatest. Napoleon was. I gotta say that. But we were in on 3 days in a row. Now, if I had a 2-week run, which we never really do, but if I did, I actually have a 70 platter that I would bring up, put in the center of the room, and then just run the 70 on because it's just too much for one person to keep an eye on.
Yeah. And just like the Mahoning projection team, Dorman's a rock star, the legend runs deep, which is great. You want somebody in that position to truly own it.
Oh, absolutely. And she's very, very fastidious. And she's also very emotionally attached. So when things go wrong, she's not amused. But you want somebody who cares. You really, really do.
Yeah.
We're very fortunate that we have her. And, because 35mm operators are few and far between. And you know what? I haven't been in a booth. I haven't run 35 since 2009. And you know what? Every time I go in there and I see it and I see the reels, maybe I should want to get back in and do this. But leave it to the professional at this stage of my life. I really don't. I don't want to practice on a print. I used to have practice when we were teaching the kids how to thread up, but not anymore. This is leave it up to the people that you're paying to do the job. So,
I definitely want to give Jeff the opportunity for any questions. Being a classic operator of both indoor and outdoors, you guys share a common ground.
So, what do you got for me, Jeff?
Well, I am fascinated by the story that you've been telling us. I love it.
Oh, thank you.
A lot of it crisscrosses back and forth with some of the same experiences I've had. The most locations I owned at one time was I had 3 locations. I had 1 indoor and 2 drive-ins at one time that I owned. That was years ago. But I never had, I'm trying to think, man, what would I have been like with 8 or 10 locations? And it's a mind blower. I've enjoyed your story so much. Right now, I got to tell you, with 35mm at my drive-in, I'm very happy to just have 1 location because you're right. You got to keep an eye on everything that's going on. And I don't run now. I have a bad hip right now, so I haven't been running 35mm myself for about a year and a half now. Before that, I did the majority of it. Now I haven't done much at all the last year and a half or so, but I want to get back into it because I do miss it. But I do have some great projectionists. I've got some great projectionists myself that I trained before my hip really went bad, and they're doing a great job. So,
what a lovely, what a lovely shout out! What a lovely shout out! And I bet you they deserve every accolade you could possibly get because it's a very, very, very unique talent. It's a love. It's not a job. It's a passion, and it's and they're to be a motion picture operator. That I don't think there could be anything because the booth is the holy of holies. Everybody wants to see the projector booth, and you know what I'm saying.
No, you should see what. I'm crazy about my booth. I mean, the whole drive-in in general, but my booth especially. When I go in, the first thing I do is sit down at my desk and I clean stuff off of it because stuff gets piled there over the week or a day or two that I'm not there. First thing I do is I go in and I clean my desk off because I can't stand having crap all over my desk. So that's just a funny story. And I'm not mad at anybody for the stuff being there. It's just that when I go in there, I want some place that I can put my elbows on my desk and not have a bunch of junk sitting there. But yeah, I know what you mean. I'm very particular about the booth. Very particular.
The whole thing is, it's all a matter of detail. Everything is detailed when you're projecting to an audience. We're here to entertain. We're here to create memories. We're here to provide the public with an opportunity to see something they cannot see anywhere else. And that's why what we do, is unique and special. And I'm glad that I'm in this community of people like yourselves who understand and appreciate this. And anybody listening, the key here is if you're interested, ask politely. You'll show anybody if they ask politely to see the projection booth. And they always look with great wonder.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, we have people roaming in and out of there at all times during the night. And sometimes the projectionists get a little bit not upset, but they get a little bit scratchy because it's like, they're trying to thread projectors and people are walking into them and, it gets a little hairy sometimes. So we're trying to figure out a way to control it a little bit and yet still let people come in there.
Some of the projection booths over the years, some of the newer constructions actually have the booth walls made of glass so people could look in. The problem is not only could you look in, but also the light, was too much off the lobby. So, you would see it on the screen because it would go through the ports and it would be distracting. There's got to be a better way to do it than glass, but it's nice that people can be a part of that because they want to understand the process and they want to know how that magic is created. And, we did a Q&A not too long ago, and I actually had an old trailer and I cut up the trailers. And as people walked out, I said, now this is a piece of 35 millimeter film. You thought I handed them a bar of silver. They went, we
do that as well. We love doing it for the kiddos. Whenever a kid comes in, it's here's the bookmark keepsake, and they'll hold it up to the light, and it really does take that magic to a tangible place, But it's true for a repertory house or a cinema that relies on classic formats. That projection booth is the heart and soul of the whole operation. So having people come in and truly appreciate it and get to see how the donuts are made, I guess you'd say, is really a treat and something that we love doing, giving folks kind of a peek behind the curtain, if you will.
Well, you know what? If we don't do it, who will?
That's right. And that's why I love, like you said, that this is a community. And the gift of this podcast is that it has connected us with our community and the people that are so like-minded like us that they are going out on those limbs. They are taking those shots. They are programming the films that we all wish we could see. And our mantra is if something cool is going on, you make the effort to go and appreciate it. And we see that every single weekend at the Mahoning. And we know that there will be that crossover of folks that hear this and say, I got to get my butt over to the Barrymore. I got to meet Nelson.
Well, we also have a very, very good team. Our director of administration, Charlene Trotter, she makes sure that our message gets out to everybody. We have a great manager, Andrew Van Valen. He's a rock star, and he's very, very gentle, and he's very generous with all of our, all of our team. We certainly have, we have, I think at last count, 700 members. So, we got them from the $25, senior citizens to the $2,500 life members. And so, and he's very good with all of our members and customers. And I love seeing people come back, and I love people who want to talk about movies, and I love people who want to share their experiences, the first movie they ever saw. I mean, somebody asked me the other day, what was the first movie you ever saw? I said, actually, it was Journey to the Center of the Earth. And it developed in me a lifelong dream to hop in an airplane and fly to Edinburgh because of that movie. And I finally did it. So it's amazing what film can and does do to you, and how it inspires people, and how it makes you want, to even see and do more when it comes to, how can I be entertained? How can I learn? How can I see more? How can I be better? It's a wonderful expression, of, you see, the one thing that I always remember to remind people, it's also a business. The artistic element is really great to pay attention to that. But it's also, we got to make enough money to be able to continue to do this.
That's right.
I think ultimately, they get the message if you handle it properly.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. For me, it's been a wonderful journey, and if you may pardon the expression, it has been a wonderful life, and it's been a wonderful life because I've been able to do this. I mean, again, in my early 20s, I decided this is what I wanted to do with the rest of my life. And, almost 50 years later, it was the right decision. I don't regret a day of it.
That's beautiful. And we should all be so lucky, And, again, for somebody who had that amazing run, went into their comfortable place, and then that love of cinema pulled you right back in. You can't stay away. That love.
Also, the borough of Fort Lee, spent a lot of time, effort, money, and I felt a need to honor that commitment. And this is something that we discussed for years and years and years and years. And I knew I had the tools, and I had the background, and and the connections. And why would I make the town go through all this craziness trying to find somebody who could program the films and supervise the museum and administrative staff. And I mean, this is what I did.
When you're right there.
Yeah.
Destiny, my friend, destiny. Well, before we let you go, why don't you let people know how they can find you and find the Barrymore, whether it's online or physical?
Well, what's nice, if you know where the George Washington Bridge is, we're 300 yards from the bridge. So we're right in the heart of town on Main Street, and you can't miss us. We are a very unique-looking building, and we have a ticker sign, just like Times Square, that tells you what films that we're showing. We have a beautiful, beautiful lobby with a huge video wall, which always shows our upcoming films. So if you pass it, you won't miss it, that's for sure. If you want to access us on the World Wide Web, it's BarrymoreFilmCenter.com. or .org, however you want to look at it. And that gives you our show times, it gives you a history of the theater, gives you a history of Fort Lee, the film town, and it also gives you an opportunity to learn a little bit more about the things that we've been talking about today. I'm very fortunate, I'm very happy, and I'm very blessed to know that I can take a film that, for example, I've enjoyed, and a film that I think that you might have never seen, and to be able to take that wonderful feeling of my first experience seeing that movie and share it with people. And that's what programming is all about. Somebody said, I guess you show only your favorite films. Well, sometimes no. We have to look for our audiences as well. And sometimes you just have to, as you guys know, sometimes just take a plain old shot in the dark and say, maybe this will work. Maybe I'll attract a different audience. When I booked in Pink Flamingos, I didn't know where I was going with that, but we had 80 people show up. I mean, we do Rocky Horror all the time, and we get a couple hundred people show up for that each time we do it. So it's worth our time, effort, and trouble. We have not gone too esoteric because you have to develop that audience to want to see more, want to dig a little bit deeper.
Audience,
yeah, you have to, and we're not there yet. But I still think popular culture, we still have about 3,000 or 4,000 films. I mean, this past year, we probably showed individuals, because remember, I only showed the film once.
Yep.
We've probably showed over 300 titles this year, not including short films, not including or independent films, not any of the films from our film festivals, because we do the Thomas Edison Film Festival, we do the Asbury Shorts Film Festival, we do our own film festival, which is a short film festival. We get films that submitted from 80 countries around the world. So yeah, we don't count those. I'm talking about standard feature-length films. We've shot over 300 titles. So we've been busy.
Amazing. You are doing God's work. We thank you so much for giving us the time out of your, I'm sure, busy schedule. And being that you're on the podcast, it would just be foolish if we didn't mention that we are planning a partnership together.
Yep.
A night at the drive-in at the Barrymore Theater, where you'll be able to come out and hang out with me, Jeff, Mark, the Mahoning team. And we're going to do a classic double feature. We haven't chosen our titles yet, which will be a great meeting of the minds. I can't wait for that. But you guys have that to look forward to. I believe we're going to do March, right?
Correct.
So you guys will be hearing about that. So excited to have you as part of our community, as part of our family, as we like to say, and keep up the great work and everything that you're doing.
Gentlemen, thank you for this time. I enjoyed being with you, and it's something that I look forward to seeing you all at the BFC, or I'm going to take a trip to Pennsylvania and visit you folks.
Love it. Come on.
Great. Sounds good.
You're an inspiration to us all. And on that note, Jeff, take it away, my friend.
Ladies and gentlemen, thanks again for coming out tonight to the Mahoning Drive-In Theater. We hope you'll come back and see us again real soon. The exit is on the right-hand side of the screen at the front of the field, and most importantly, have a very safe trip home. Good night, and God bless you.